So, all right, guys, we got to get this one right. On three, we're going to say, welcome back to Extraordinary Thoughts Put on Their Mind. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome back to Extraordinary Mind.
And we back.
That'll work right there.
Yeah.
And we back. And we
Yeah.
back. And we back. And we
Y'all did y'all best. And that's all that matters.
Now, before we get started with this episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like this episode, share this podcast, and if you can, do me a favor, head on down to the review section and leave an honest review, because this podcast was dedicated to helping us become a better version of ourselves. And I don't know what that version is, but I know that just like we need a little bit more money, just like we need a little bit more sleep, just like we need a little bit more of anything in life, we deserve to be a little better than what we are right now. What's going on, everybody? It's that ordinary podcaster with the extraordinary thoughts that tells you to stop being great and be extraordinary. I'm your host, Demetrius Thickman, also known as Meech Speaks, and welcome back to another episode of Extraordinary Thoughts for the Ordinary Mind. All right, so it's Friday, and one thing that I love about the weekend is that the weekend offers us an opportunity to take a break. You know what I mean? Shout out to anybody that's got duty this weekend. My heart goes out to you. I know you wish you, you know what I mean? Like, I hate having duty on the weekend or anybody that has to work on the weekend. But the weekend is always an opportunity to be able to take a break. The weekend is that opportunity to be able to recharge, to realign, to refocus. So that way when you go into Monday, you got the energy to tackle Monday. That you got the vision to be able to tackle the goals for that next week. That's what the weekend's for. You know what I mean? To unwind. And given the fact that, I'm on leave and I've been on leave for almost like 2 weeks now, every day's been feeling like a weekend. So every day it has been an opportunity for me to be able to unwind. Every day has also been an opportunity for me to recharge, to realign, to refocus. And the one thing that I've been trying to refocus on is development. And, I'm going to just be honest with you, and I don't know who needs to hear this, but I struggle with a couple of insecurities. And during the time that I've had off work, I've been trying to unpack those insecurities. Now, I know I make episodes for everybody else, but I really want this episode to be for me. Like, I'm going to just go ahead and ask for permission right now. Like, if you don't mind, like, can I just be selfish on this episode? Like, can I just really just talk about me on this episode? I try not to be narcissistic. I try not to be self-centered. I try not to make a podcast about myself, but it's been a couple of things that I just been struggling with that I just really want to share. And one of my biggest insecurities is my talent. Now, for those who are wondering, like, I don't think that I'm not good enough. No, I don't think that at all, to be honest with you. I actually know I have a talent. I do. My biggest insecurity is that I'm worried that my talent is going to get me in rooms that my character is not ready to sit in. And I'll say that again. My biggest insecurity is that I'm worried that my talent is going to get me into rooms that I'm just not ready to sit in yet. Like, I'm worried that my talent is going to take me to new heights that I might not be ready for. And it scares me, man. Like, it scares me to my bone because it's been one of the things that I feel like I've been struggling with. And it's constant uphill battle of, who I am right now and who I need to be for the future. Let me rephrase, who I am right now and who my talent is going to need me to be in the future. So as we dive into this episode, I really want you to understand that this episode is all about character development. And as I share the things that I learned over this past, these couple of weeks, I want you to just please, if it can apply to your life, allow it to. But let's go ahead and get it. Now, before we start, there's a phrase that I recently just heard. And for those who don't know, one of my biggest inspirations in speaking is Inky Johnson. And I remember when I first heard Inky Johnson speak, the way that he articulated his words, his pitch, his volume, his control. It really, that was one of the most inspiring moments for me. I'm not even about to lie. And when I saw that man speak, I had to really just, I gravitated to whatever he was putting out. I follow him on Instagram. You know what I mean? I was really listening to his podcast, the Serendipity podcast. And on one of his episodes, he talked about deconstructing and reconstructing you. And when he said that, I kind of sat a little upright in my chair. because it kind of caught me off guard, deconstructing and reconstructing you. What do you mean by that? And he went on to, talk about like how the things that you are right now, let me rephrase that, your way of thinking, who you are right now may have gotten you to this spot, but it may not be what you need to get to the next level. In fact, it might actually be the thing that's holding you back. And with me right now and the things that I'm trying to realign and try to refocus on, that really resonated with me. I don't know, I don't know who need to hear this, but that one resonated with me a little bit. Because my character is something that I've been trying to, realign with, to refocus on, to repair, essentially. Not necessarily repair, I don't want to say that. I feel like my character is something that I'm constantly working on. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but I really want you to understand that character development it's not a overnight thing. It's an active process in which you constantly have to work on yourself on a regular basis. So with that being said, there's 3 things that I want to echo through this episode. The first one I want you to understand is upgrade your way of thinking. Upgrade your way of thinking. The second one is understand that your triggers might actually be what you need to heal from. And then lastly, learn to control your triggers. Because if you don't control your triggers will be used to control you. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's episode. The first one is upgrade your way of thinking. Now notice I said upgrade and not change, but to allow yourself to generate new thoughts, which will lead to new actions and new results. See, when I sit back and I think about that one, what got me to here may not actually be exactly what I need to get to the next level. And the first thing that I thought about when I said upgrade your way of thinking is my thought process. See, for a lot of people that don't know, sometimes I can actually be very closed-minded. And, it's weird because you would think that I'm actually very open-minded. But to be honest with you, I can be very closed-minded when it comes down to my ideas and how I feel about a certain situation. I can get very closed off. And as I sat back on that, I thought about when that started. And I remember when I was 18 and I told everybody that I was going to join the Marine Corps, how everybody tried to talk me out of that. You know what I mean? Like, and you've probably heard the story before, like where I've told people that, hey, I'm going to join the military. And they told me these, I'm going to get blown up or I'm going to come back crazy or X, Y, and Z is going to happen to me based off of what they had seen in CNN. So I had to get used to standing firm on what I believed in. And when I decided I was going to do a podcast, before the podcast, when I decided that I was going to get my shit together, a lot of people told me that I wasn't going to be able to do that. How are you going to talk about mindset and overcoming this and being a better version of yourself when you do these things? You getting in fights out in the back of the parking lot and you talking about trying to become a better version of yourself? And it was a lot of naysayers. So I had to stand on what I believed in very early on in this. And because of how I've stood, because of the conviction that I've had with my beliefs, it has allowed me to get to this point. But the problem is that when you got too much conviction, right? When you stand firm on the way that you believe or what you believe in, sometimes you can get closed off. Especially if you feel like whatever they saying is against whatever you believe in. You don't have an open mind to it. So now here I am with a community, with people that, are listening to what I'm saying, and I have to learn to acknowledge that. I can't be so closed-minded. Just because they think differently than I do doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. They just have a different way of thinking. In fact, instead of brushing them off or closing yourself off to them, Demetrius, try to understand what they're thinking. Try to understand their thought process. Try to understand what it is that got them to this point right here. Because to be honest with you, you might actually learn something. And that was something that I had to learn. I had to tell myself that I had to upgrade. I didn't necessarily have to change who I am. You know what I mean? Like, I ain't got to change it. I just got to upgrade. You feel me? I got to just upgrade. Because if you want to go to the next level, your closed-minded way of thinking is going to cause you to shut doors. Let me rephrase, it's going to cause you to not walk into places that you definitely are supposed to be in, but because they think differently than you won't allow yourself to be there. Next, what triggers you might actually be what you need to heal from. Oftentimes, what we don't understand is that what bothers you, you know what I mean? Like what triggers you. And let me, I definitely got to clear that one up, man. Like something that bothers you and something that triggers you are completely different things. Like usually something that triggers you is associated to something like related to a trauma response. And for those who don't understand what your trauma responses are, you have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. If something ties back into one of those trauma responses, it's going to necessarily trigger you. Something that bothers you is like people that run late, that bothers you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to undermine your trigger. But what triggers you might actually be what you might need to heal from. And how that related back to me, and I really wanted to use me as an example for this one is that I'm triggered by confrontation. Like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'm not the type of person to walk away. You feel me? Like, the high road is rarely taken with me. The high road is rarely taken with me. And is that something I'm proud of? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. But it comes back to, or it relates back to what my trauma responses were. Before I realized who I was, and when I say realize who I was, before I realized my confidence, before I became me, my trauma response used to be fawn. You know what I mean? I used to be one of those type of go with the flow type of people. Oh, you didn't hear me? All right, no big deal. I want to keep the peace. It took me a long time to say this, but I used to people please. And there's times where I find myself in that situation where I will people please if I'm under enough stress. You know what I mean? Or I feel like it's the best way for the situation. And it was always an aspect that I hated about myself, like how I used to just let shit go. So now when I started to develop into who I am now, I rarely let things go. You know what I mean? Like I rarely let things go. And because of that, I've switched more over to a fight response. Like if I feel like me and you are at odds with each other, fuck what you're talking about, then let's go ahead and just get into it. You know what I mean? Everybody else can take the high road. Me and you, we about to get in the mud and do this. You said something about me. Well, guess what? I got something to say about you. Now, you add into what I had said earlier about being closed-minded. So if you and me have conflicting views, then me and you about to debate it out. We're going to argue it out. And if you want to, we can throw them motherfucking things too. I had to unpack that about me. And that was something that I had realized recently. Especially being on social media. You cannot react to everything that you see on social media. It's going to be people that have different views than you on a regular basis. Social media, once again, ain't for the weak-hearted. And if you're constantly providing a reaction to anybody that says something to you, you're always going to be stuck in that place. How are you able to move forward if you're constantly getting held up by everyone that has something to say to you? It's the nature of it. People gonna talk. People always gonna have something to say. People ain't always gonna agree with what you have to say. They ain't gonna believe in it. Hell, people gonna step out of line on a regular basis, but if it does not harm you, if it does not harm the people around you, let that shit go. That was something that I had to unpack. And before we go into the next one, I just really want to just stop a moment and just ask, what is it something that you need to unpack? You know what I mean? Like, what is something that triggers you? Because what is triggering you is something that you need to heal from. Like, what's triggering you is knowing that an insecurity about yourself. What's triggering you right now is something that needs to be reconstructed. What triggers you right now It's the thing that you need to be able to work on that is going to take you to the next level. It's going to help you become that better version. It's going to help you live a more fruitful life. It's going to help you in the journey of becoming that version of yourself that you were destined to be. What is triggering you right now is something that you need to heal from. Next, if you cannot learn to control your triggers, then your triggers will be used to control you. And I'll say that one more time. If you cannot learn to control your triggers, then your triggers will be used to control you. See, a lot of times, people end up in the exact same place that they are stuck in for X amount of years because they cannot control their triggers. Every time that they try to make a step towards becoming a better version, something triggers them and reverts them back to who they are. Let me rephrase. They reverts them back to who they used to be. If you cannot control your triggers will be used to control you. I'm a firm believer in being able to control who you are, to not get out of character, to not step out of who you normally are, not to be able to control your narrative. If you cannot control your triggers, your narrative will be easily changed. It allows somebody else to control the outcome of whatever the situation is. It allows people to be able to control how they perceive you. If you can't control your triggers, then they will be used to control you. And how do you learn to control your triggers? It always goes back into what are your trauma responses? What is it that you do when you're under stress? And just to double tap what the trauma responses are, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. What is it about you that causes one of these trauma responses to activate? And then, how do you get there? For me, now that I know that I'm triggered by confrontation, I had to practice patience. I had to get accustomed to, somebody that got a fake profile or got a private page disagreeing to whatever I'm saying and just be like this, you know what? Hey, I can't win them all. I had to get used to hearing somebody else that has an opposing view than what I have and asking if they could share their view and help me understand it. So that way, it's not that I'm trying to agree with you, but I'm just trying to understand exactly where you're coming from instead of just telling them that they're wrong. That's how I had to learn how to control my trigger, because it's easy. Let me rephrase. Let me rephrase. It's easy. It's easy to allow your trigger to take control and you say how you truly. I've been saying let me rephrase a lot lately. I apologize for that. But it's easy, right? Like it's easy to say what feels good. It's easy to say what feels good, not what's right, not what needs to be said, but what feels good. It's easy to do what feels good. The hard part is the thing that takes you out of your comfort zone. For some, that might be walking away. For some, that may be voicing their opinion. For some, that may be, hey, man, just trying to understand. For others, it may be something different. But taking the necessary steps to be able to control your triggers is what's going to be able to get you to the next level of who you need to be, where you need to be. As we come to a close to this episode, one thing that I just really want everybody to understand is that character development, it's an active process. This ain't something that you just going to do one night and think that you got everything figured out. You know what I mean? This isn't something that you're going to be able to just do one time and think that you never have to work on it again. This is going to be an ongoing process. There's going to be days where you're going to slip up. But Rome was not built in a day. And in order for you to become that better version, right? You have to work with it. You have to be patient with yourself. And you have to understand that your character development, your development as a person is what's going to be needed to get you to the next level. And just like that, another extraordinary thought left this ordinary mind. I hope you enjoyed this episode half as much as I enjoyed making it. Stay tuned every Monday as we bring you another episode. And lastly, don't forget to like this podcast, subscribe to this podcast, and share this podcast, because this podcast was dedicated to helping you become a better version of yourself. And I don't know who needs to hear that, but just like we need more sleep, just like we need more money, we deserve to be a better version of ourselves. Stay hungry, stay motivated. I'm out.